quality corporate training meets powerful AI. Docebo is the world's first generative AI learning platform. You can customize the learning experience and create content in seconds. Learn more at docebo.com.
Balance is everything. The philosophers of ancient Greece knew this well, and it's a basic tenet of Eastern thought. But it's also essential to market economics and modern society. But how can we find the point of balance, especially when the context is so wide, varied, and constantly shifting in opposite directions? Let's try to use a metaphor. Imagine a screen right before our eyes, an extreme close-up. There's no sound. We can see a rope with a red flag attached to it. We can't tell who's pulling on either end. All we can see is that it moves a bit to the right, a bit to the left, remaining mostly at the center, inching towards one way or the other, leaving us with a calming sense of balance. But if we add sound, we can now hear jeering and yelling and grunting. And if we zoom out, now the entire scene is much more clear. Now we can see two teams struggling as they pull the rope in each one's direction, their faces grimacing, their shoes gripping the floor, their backs heaving, their muscles strained. They're pulling with all the strength they can muster towards opposite sides, and the little red flag remains stuck in place. This chaotic wide shot has done away with any illusion of peace and calm. The balance is fragile. It could break at any time. However, the scene itself never changed. We just changed our point of view. And with it came a new perspective. Now, instead of two opposing teams, let's imagine millions of Americans at either side of this tug of war. Let's imagine two opposing ideals for America. On one side, the land of opportunity, on the other, that of inequality. A healthy economy against social discontent boiling under the surface waiting to explode. The American dream and the American nightmare. That red flag is still there, hanging from its rope at the center of the shot, apparently in balance. But how much longer can it last? I am Guido Brera, and you're listening to Black Box, The Hidden Side of Finance, a podcast by Cora Media, sponsored by Docebo. At the movies recently, a film has both impressed and divided American audiences. It's called Civil War. The director, Alex Garland, is British. In the movie's opening scene, we find the President of the United States alone and nervous. The framing of the shot is tight, and he's cast in silence. He's rehearsing a speech that he's about to give to the nation. But this nation has fallen into a nightmarish civil war. The states are divided between the Western forces on one side and the loyalists on the other. In the middle, just chaos, fear, and destruction. The story takes place in an apparently near future. In a way, it's an exaggeration of our present day. This civil war, with its bloodshed, violence, tanks, and helicopters soaring across the air as they prepare to bomb cities, is apparently Hollywood's dramatization of the real, subtle yet swelling civil war that has been ongoing in the USA in these last few years. When watching Civil War, we can't ignore the parallel with what we all saw take place on January 6, 2021, during the siege of Capitol Hill. But this isn't all that's disturbing about the film, and it's not the only thing that struck audiences worldwide. At this point, we're used to the way in which American movies identify their enemies as Soviets, Islamic terrorists, or some warmongering alien species. The bad guys are always a foreign invading force, The Americans are always good and united, and after some struggle they pull through and bring everything to a happy end. Not here. In civil war, the enemy comes from within. There's no clear cut between the good guys and the bad. The playing field is full of contradictions, paradoxes, changes of perspective, and optical illusions, just like the USA of today. And the ending is problematic and bitter. But there's something else that's shocking for its symbolic and timely value. The film moves along, at least initially, following separate protagonists. First of all, we have the president, lonely, certain of victory, and confident that he can turn around the spirit of his people. Then, the movie shows a group of photojournalists, the real protagonists of the story. They move as if inside a bubble, untouchable, in the middle of the action and close to the war zones. They do this to follow the story, or the perfect shot that they then send off to an uncountable number of other screens and other bubbles. And then there's a sort of road trip where we see combat-riddled roads and towns, as well as places where it almost seems that nothing has happened at all, and nothing has changed. It's all hypercharged, sometimes grotesquely so. It's all eerily similar to the USA that we've come to know today. 2023 closed with the Standard & Poor's 500 index gaining 24.2%, and the Nasdaq going up by 54. These have been the best performances so far in this century. In the fourth quarter of 2023, the American GDP grew by 3.3%, way outperforming the predictions of economists. At the beginning of January 2024, the American market was expecting rate cuts of 163 basis points by December. Today, we've accepted cuts of 129 basis points by the end of 2027 to be implemented largely in 2025 rather than 2024. The translation of these values is clear. There will be no hard landing. The fear of a recession after the strong recovery following the pandemic seems to have gone away, or at least to have been pushed back. Signs are looking good on the job market front as well. Unemployment remains firmly under 4%. We can say that our mirror is reflecting the best of all possible worlds. But if we shift our perspective, feelings change as well. If we move from the shimmering Silicon Valley to the suburbs of San Francisco, we're suddenly looking at a horde of zombies, victims to marginalization and fentanyl, the synthetic opioid that has turned into a devastating social emergency. In 2023, drugs caused more than 112,000 deaths in the USA. And still another perspective is that of the affordability index for house ownership, which is at its all-time low. An average American family can't afford a traditional middle-of-the-line property. And here's another change of perspective. Student loan debt has exploded in the last few years, and most recently, student protests against the Israel-Palestine conflict are reaching boiling point levels. Let's focus even more on the financial side of things. If we follow investments, we can see that there's been a strong rise in stocks pertaining to the defense and arms industries. And there's also a clear gold rush going on, both literal and digital, with the price of Bitcoin skyrocketing and predicted to continue to do so. On top of this, current predictions see Donald Trump snatching the presidency again in November. It's hard to focus on so many things in just one edit. The screenplay almost seems out of control. The mirror has shattered into 1,000 pieces. Because the USA is in shatters itself. The balance that America and the entire Western world has come to depend on is uncertain, constantly going one way or the other, with both sides ever more divided, ever more separate, and ever less reconcilable. The tug-of-war appears to be at its most tense. The distance between American dream and American nightmare is the widest it's ever been. And as soon as that rope snaps, we'll all fall down together. Black Box is a Cora News podcast, produced by Cora Media and sponsored by Docebo. Written by Guido Brera with I Diavoli. Editorial supervision by Francesca Milano. Intro and sound design by Luca Micheli. Editing and post-production by Luca Micheli and Emanuele Moscatelli. Production organization by Alex Peverengo.